Okay, and we're back with part two of the 2020 Virtual Ag Science Conservation Camp. And this segment will focus on fish habitat with Nature Heritage Society. And I have two people in front of me that are very knowledgeable, and they're going to introduce themselves right now.
Hi, I'm Teresa Anthony with Nature Heritage Society, and I'm an area chief with Texas Parks and Wildlife for the Houston area.
Michael Thomas, I'm the Area Chief for Aquatics in Humble. I'm also the instructor for hunting, fishing, archery, camping, boating, and I'm 9 times winner of the Fisherman of the Year for the Rusty Hook Fishing Club. And we're going to talk to you about fish habitat and conservation. We will discuss how the fish interact with their habitat and how we can conserve them and their habitat. I'll begin. First of all, what is a fish? Fish, in order to define what a fish is, there are 5 characteristics. We would give you time to figure those out, but we'll have to go ahead and tell you what they are. The 5 things are, first, gills to breathe. They breathe dissolved oxygen from the water with their gills. They have fins to swim. That's how they get around. Front fins are like arms, bottom fins are like feet, tail fins are like maneuvering thrusters. They have to have a backbone because they're vertebrae. They have to be cold-blooded. That means their body temperature is the same as the surrounding habitat. And they have to live in the water, which is their habitat. So how do fish sense their habitat? They sense their habitat in several ways. They smell. The smell is also very long distance. They can smell things very, very far away. They have sight, but no eyelids, so they have to protect themselves from the sun by going down underwater. They have touch. Their skin is very sensitive and it's covered with scales most of the time. Also covered with mucus in order to protect them from bacteria. They have taste. They have a stationary tongue in the back of their mouth that doesn't come in and out, so they can taste things. And drum and catfish have what's called chin bobbles. They hang down under and they can smell by running along the bottom and touching things with their bobbles. They have hearing but no external ears. They have a hole in their head with water in it, and it has a stone inside that picks up vibrations. So you have to remember that they hear vibrations, not sounds per se. So if you're screaming and hollering on the bank, they cannot hear you. Only if you make the vibration in the water can they pick that up and sense. That's called hearing. The last sense they have is called the lateral line. It's a line down the side of the fish, and that line down the side of the fish allows them to do things like tell when a storm's coming, see things that you cannot see, tell the salinity of the water. And you can tell, if you look closely at this picture, that there's a lateral line running this way down the fish. These are all of the other senses that are shown. Now, what do fish do? People ask me that all the time. A fish has to be doing something. This is what a fish gets eaten or they eat something. That's called the circle of life. Fish also play, they learn, and they swim. They have buoyancy. Some of them have a swim bladder so that they can float. You can see a fish standing absolutely still. He's not rising or falling or moving. He's just buoyant. He pulls enough air into his into his swim bladder in order for him to stay in one spot. Some fish don't have a swim bladder, namely the flounder, so he has to stay on the bottom at all times. The other thing that fish do is they sleep. They nap. Every now and then a fish will just stop, take a quick nap, and then move on. It doesn't pay to nap too long if you're a fish, you might get eaten. But long naps are called estivation. It's like hibernation in a bear. They can sleep for like months. Breeding. Fish breed. Baby fish are known as fry, F-R-Y. That's a good term to remember. They grow old. If you look at the stone in the head, you can cut it in half and count the rings. That tells you how old the fish is. Just like in a tree, every ring is 1 year. They sometimes get caught by fishermen with line and hook, with nets, with bow and arrows, with spears, lots of ways to catch fish. Sometimes the fish even get released to do it all over again. So, what is a good habitat? We know the habitat is water. What's good water? Good water has to have 5 things. A food source, so big fish eat little fish eat smaller fish. Basically, if it'll fit in his mouth, he'll eat it. Water quality. Indicators of water quality are dragonflies. They are born in fresh water and only pure, clean water. They cannot be born in water that's stagnant. Mosquitoes are born in stagnant water, which is bad water. Dragonflies have an added benefit that they eat mosquitoes, which is a good thing. Oxygen levels must be high in the water in order for there to be a good environment. Oxygen is higher in water that is moving or low down deep where it's cooler. The oxygen level is usually pretty good. So in the heat of the day, the fish will go down low in the cool part because there's more oxygen and it's cooler. Also, it protects their eyes from the sun because fish can sunburn if they stay too close to the top of the water. So that's another mechanism. They also need shelter. Shelter has 2 purposes. A fish can hide in the shelter from other fish, or they can hide in the shelter so they can ambush other fish that come by. So it has a multi-purpose. Another one is space, which is one most people don't think about. Overcrowding or undercrowding. It has been shown that fish, if you have a pond with too fewer fish, the fish will die. They need company. If you have too many fish, the fish will die. They don't like being crowded. They need their space. So space is very important when you're trying to figure out what a fish will be. So if you come up to a site or a pond and you're ready to fish, you need to consider those 5 things. If you find all 5 of them, there'll probably be fish there. If you can find 4, probably still. When you get down to 3, you're unlikely to find any fish there. The other one that you consider is salinity. That's the salt content of the water. There's salt water, which has a lot of salt. There's fresh water, which has very little salt. And then there's brackish water, where the 2 waters come together. When a river meets an ocean, that's brackish water. There are fish that prefer to live in brackish only. There's fish that prefer to live in salt only. There's fish that prefer to live in fresh water only. There are also fish that can live in all 3. Now, what can we do to help conserve the fish and their habitat? One of the things that Texas Parks and Wildlife does is they can designate a fish as game fish. Once it's called a game fish, it is highly regulated. There are rules and regulations for how many you can keep in a day and what size. The slot limit is so that you won't keep the babies, because then there won't be anything to grow up. And you don't keep the adults because those are the ones who make the new babies. So the ones that you do keep are called teenagers. So you may take as many teenagers as you want. But in order to keep the teenagers from being completely depleted, we have what's called a bag limit. The bag limit tells you how many teenagers you can take in one day. Possession limit tells you how many teenagers you can possess. Or in other words, you can have 2 days worth of fishing. You could say, I started fishing yesterday and fished all night. So I get 2 bag limits. So some of the fish will have a possession limit. All of these things will be in your rules and regulations, which is in the TPWD app or book. The last thing that conserves fish or helps with the environment is called stewardship. This is your moral compass. This is so no matter how many fish you can keep, you need to decide how many fish you will keep. And don't keep more than what you actually want or need. That's stewardship. You want to ensure that your grandchildren's grandchildren can go fishing. With that in mind, fish as if everybody is watching. and go fishing.
Often.
Okay, that sounds good. I have a couple questions.
Alrighty.
The first one is you said sometimes they take these long naps. What was the name of that?
That's estivation.
Estivation.
Estivation. Estivation.
Estivation. Okay, so when they estivate, do they just kind of hover around in the water or do they kind of hide under a rock?
Well, usually they will find a hiding space so that they don't get noticed that they're standing still, so they don't get eaten, of course. And then breathing will come to almost a complete halt. Their body temperature will stop and no functions. They don't move at all. And it's just called estivation. And they don't know why they do it. They don't do it just because it's cold. They don't do it all the time in the winter. They can do it in the middle of the summer. Just some fish decide to do it and some don't ever do it.
Okay.
If food is scarce for the fish, do they go into hibernation? Are
No.
they protected?
No, they never do it for that purpose. Usually when food is scarce, they move on until they find food. Because they're usually trying to do the other things like have babies and find oxygen move. So they're usually on the move. Fish almost never stand still unless they don't really know why they estivate. They just know they do.
Do most fish travel together?
No, there's some fish that are solitary, because they don't stay together when they raise their young. Because once the eggs are laid, only the female stays, only the male stays to guard them until they are born. Then, unfortunately, they will eat the babies if they can get, because that's food source. So babies have to find a place to hide pretty quick once they're born, when they become fry.
So they don't recognize their own fry?
No. A fish will eat a fish. A fish is just bait. A baby is just food.
Okay. I had, I guess, one more question. You mentioned that there are different limits on different fish that the Texas Park and Wildlife sets. Does that change throughout the year, or is it pretty stagnant?
They will print a new book September the 1st each year. Very seldom will these things change. If they do, it's only by a very small amount. And the only reason I would change is if something drastic happens. They're trying to save a particular fish. They will change the limits so that a fish will be a teenager or the age that you can keep him for only about 2 years of his entire life. Before that, he's too small. After that, he's too big. So he only has to be protected for those 2 years. But if we start taking too many of those, they will move the limits so that you keep more. And so the fish time is like a year and a half, or just a year that you can give, and that increases the two ends of the spectrum.
Okay, that sounds good. I think now it's time to talk about habitats.
You'll notice here I have just an example of our habitat. Here around where we live is a coastal area. It's around the Gulf of Mexico. And you'll notice that our habitat has a few different things on it. This is like the river and it goes into the Gulf of Mexico. So the rivers would be freshwater fish. And some of the examples of our freshwater fish in Texas are the black crappie, the channel catfish, bluegill, white bass, largemouth bass, rainbow trout, which a lot of us are familiar with, and freshwater drum. Now into the Gulf, where there's salt water, you'd find the flounder, which Michael talked about, which is the flatfish. It stays on the bottom. It doesn't have a bladder, so it doesn't float or swim up. It stays on the ground, kind of buries itself in the sand, and it waits for prey to come and it'll grab it. Here's a black drum. These are all saltwater fish. Red drum, a spotted sea trout, sand sea trout, and this is a sheephead, which has very distinctive black and white markings. It's also known as a convict fish because you'll notice in the old days, prisoners' uniforms were black and white striped. So it got the nickname of convict fish. And the Atlantic croaker is also found in our area. And you'll notice this area is Coastal Bay and the Gulf of Mexico It's fairly close to us, our beaches, and there's a state park in Galveston that's very accessible, and they have a lot of programs for children and families, and it's very affordable. So it's about an hour drive. You can go fishing, camping, and do all sorts of things near, which is very accessible for families near our area. Now, you'll see examples of different types of ecosystems and environments on this map. You'll notice like bushes, you'll see little islands in the river, grassy areas, little green belts. Now you'll see all sorts of animals, coyotes, dogs, chickens, cows. Some people have cows that graze on here. And we have scorpions, of course. Dragonflies, which Michael talked about. One of the wonderful things about dragonflies is that they control the mosquito population. They eat mosquitoes, and there's really, if you go for walks around the area, you'll see a very wide variety of dragonflies. Wonderful colors and sizes. They're wonderful for our ecosystem. Caterpillars that turn into butterflies, which are pollinators that help us propagate our food. So be friendly to the butterflies and the caterpillars you see. Mantises, all sorts of little animals that enjoy and come together to feed and keep our ecosystem healthy and strong. And this is why, following what Michael said, stewardship is very important. When you go out there to fish, please keep in mind that you have to keep our ecosystem clean. So whatever you bring in, take back out with you. These are areas like little grassy areas and little islands. You'll see them in the ocean, in the rivers, rocks. All these things help. They're habitats for different types of animals, whether it be insects, which feed fish, and birds, because birds also eat insects. Now, things like grasshoppers and stuff, fish also eat them. The frogs. This is the water flows, you know, from in rivers, water flows down to the ocean. So you'll see break points like rocks. You'll see that, you'll notice as you're watching the water flow, it flows faster as it comes up on the rock and kind of slows down in the front of the rock. This area is a great spot to stand and fish. And you'll see, the reason is because the water slows down. So it's easy for fish to kind of rest there and bugs to congregate there because it's a kind of a nice serene area. So you'll find fish around here waiting for insects and things like that. So this is an area which is great for fishing. And then here you'll see an alligator. Sometimes you see, you know, you've seen in the Houston area especially, there's alligators that come around every once in a while. You see them on the news and things like that. And this is a game warden. Michael touched on that. It's important to keep abreast of the rules. This is, like we said, the outdoor annual. It is also available on the Texas Parks and Wildlife website. You can look any rule. You'll find a little bit about local animals, or local fishing spots, local fish. What's I guess being stocked in the area, because Texas Parks and Wildlife also stocks local community lakes. So it's a great spot to the website and the book to go and see where you might want to take your family fishing. And this is also another book. It's called The Family Fishing Holes. These are within 120 miles of downtown Houston, fishing spots around the Houston area where you can go and have family time and fishing time. This can be found online. I'm not sure it's published anymore, but you can still find it online. Now, these are two of our state fish that you might not have been aware of. This is the red drum, and this is the Guadalupe sea bass. This one is the freshwater state fish, and this one is the saltwater safe fish. You'll notice that also we have some recreational vehicles and law enforcement vehicles. So always be aware that and conduct activities as if somebody, like Michael said, somebody is watching, because you just never know, somebody is watching. And just keep in mind that you should take care of your environments for future generations, so they can also fish and enjoy the land. ATVs and things like that, make sure that you operate them safely, so neither you get hurt or the environment gets hurt. And you'll notice that there are sailboats. You share water with all sorts of vehicles, so be aware of safety issues. The Texas Parks and Wildlife also has boating education, so you can take a class with them if you happen to get a new boat, whether it be a sailboat or a rowboat or a fishing boat. You have opportunities to learn how to be safe on the water with Texas Parks and Wildlife, okay? And you also will be sharing space with commercial vehicles, so be careful when you're out there, and just be aware of where you are and what you're doing to be safe, and enjoy your time out in the outdoors prudently.
That's very good. I have a couple questions
Of
for
course.
you. Didn't hear you speak much on pollution. Can you speak on pollution a little bit?
Certainly, we will later in the camp address that
Okay.
specifically. But when you do go fishing, please be aware, whatever you do bring, take back out with you. You know, there's receptacles on the beach or wherever you go, just put it back in your car. You can take a bag with you and throw your trash in there. And fishing line is another thing that's especially a problem. Don't leave your fishing line, because birds get caught up in it, fish can get caught up in it. Your fishing nets is another thing. Don't leave things when you don't have to, okay? Take everything back with you and take precautions that leave the environment the way you found it. It's called no trace left behind. So when you come into an environment, leave it like you were never there. That's what we advise.
That's real good. And maybe a question for both, because both of you all are volunteers, correct? Are there any efforts or any organizations that kind of help with pollution, to actually go out and help clean our wildlife areas?
Yes. Well, Texas Parks and Wildlife has Beach Cleanup Day, so they'll get volunteers together at least once a year to go and help clean up the beaches. Our organization, Nature Heritage Society, that we locally clean up our areas, whether it be roadways or parks. We have a site in the Houston area where we clean up regularly. We're associated with different types of small nonprofits that regularly go out and do cleaning in their neighborhoods to keep their environment clean. And you can look on Keep Houston Beautiful. They have volunteer opportunities also for cleaning up around the Houston area. Not only that, they will also provide you with like garbage bags and litter pickers and things like that for free if you get a group together to go and clean up wherever you want to within the Houston area.
Very good. Any organizations or maybe businesses, you know how like they do Adopt a Highway, are there any Adopt a Wildlife?
There probably are. You might, I know like Boy Scouts and stuff do that, adopt, but the organizations to go through, it might be
where would you go to get that information
a
from?
question like that, you might go to Texas Parks and Wildlife
Website?
The website.
Okay.
Yeah. I know you can go there to volunteer. So you can volunteer at state parks. There's many volunteer opportunities if you enjoy working with the public and want to share your love of the outdoors or a particular skill you have and you want to hand it down to the next generation and teach them how to enjoy the outdoors. So everybody is looking for volunteers and people to hand down their knowledge. Like Michael has 30, 40 years of fishing experience, and he regularly shares through his volunteer efforts his fishing knowledge with children and adults and families.
And Texas Parks and Wildlife, before we had the pandemic thing, that was a free, every other first Saturday of every other month, they taught a free aquatics class. And that aquatics class taught you all about habitat, taught you about tying knots, taught you about fishing tackle. It went over the entire course and it was free. But since we have this, they're starting to do something with virtual, which we're going to hear about later this month on how we're going to do this virtually. But that's a good thing to do because it teaches you to appreciate the fish and their environment. And once you know more about something, you tend to care more about something when you know more about it. So knowledge helps in that issue.
Knowledge helps with stewardship and conservation, which goes along with hunting, fishing, and preservation. Most hunters and fishers are very responsible individuals who enjoy what they're doing and who want to be able to conserve for the next generations.
Right. And we have I touched on when I first started off, I mentioned things about the characteristics of a fish, because we're all talking about aquatics and fish, and I told everybody the 5 characteristics of a fish. So those of you who all remembered that, there's a little quiz at the end that looks like this. This has a lot of different things on here, but there are only 5 fish in this picture. So your job is to pick the 5 fish from this picture and tell everybody who those are. So we won't give you the answer now, but that is what you need to work on for homework. Who are the 5 fish in the picture? And that's done, I guess. We got anything else?
Any other questions?
This might be a little bit over your head. It's in the times right now. If someone maybe contracts COVID or finds out that they're positive for COVID, how does that affect wildlife or maybe even pets? Should they social distance from them as well or not fish?
I don't know anything about
that is not something we would be able to tell you, but there is another segment of the camp that will go over zoonotic diseases, which means how you get or how diseases are transferred from animals to humans. So there will be a detailed session later on within the camp to be able to kind of help you know what the procedures are and what agencies can help you with something like that.
Can you talk about your work in the school? So you working with
yes,
Miles
both of
Ahead?
us. Yeah, we both go into schools, elementary through high school, to teach AED classes, which is aquatic education. We go camping, we teach camping, we teach how to fish, and we have sessions where we'll take families out for free and teach them how to fish and then let them loose to be able to fish. We'll provide the bait, we provide equipment. So right now, COVID has put a little bit of a crimp in that, but we look forward to bringing all that back up. We do inner city school. Nature Heritage Society and Michael, in our capacity as area chiefs in the area, go into schools regularly to teach all sorts of different types of outdoor education. He will teach hunting. He is well versed with very many aspects of outdoor activities: hunting, boating. What else? Archery, yes. Camping. Archery is another one that we teach.
And I just had we have a co-op grant. We both have a co-op grant from Texas Parks and Wildlife, and that co-op grant is to get people outside, and specifically into state parks if we can. And it's aimed at what they call the underserved, which are females, minorities, and youth. So we're supposed to get those people to appreciate park and therefore want to come back.
expose them, and oftentimes it's the first time. That
Yeah, a
they've
lot of
been.
times I had a lot of people come, and since then they went and bought tents and they bought camping equipment and they bought archery equipment, and they get out there and they just enjoy it. But now, of course, we have a little problem with a lot of parks being closed and things like that. But eventually, when all this clears up, we'll have a new grant and we'll start all over again, and we'll start getting more people out.
One of the local parks that you can, you have your community parks, and like I said, if you look on the outdoor annual book, or not really the outdoor annual book, but the website, the Texas Parks and Wildlife does regularly stock community lakes. So you can go on there and check and see where the next stocking is, and then just go and fish there, okay? So that's a free service of Texas Parks and Wildlife, so communities can enjoy fishing in their neighborhoods.
How can families or schools get in touch with you guys for you to come out?
We have a Facebook, the Nature Heritage Society. Our email is natureheritagesociety.houston@gmail.com. And you can also check the Ag Science website and ask a question, email them a question. They'd be happy to answer how you can get in touch with us and further questions if you have any further questions or want to get with us to maybe plan an activity with your group, which we would love to do that.
Yeah, the TPWD website will have our information because we're area chiefs.
What is an area chief? Did you guys talk about what an area chief is?
Well, an area chief, first you got to become an instructor. So when you take one of those AED classes that we were talking about, we can make you an instructor. Instructors can teach children, can give classes to children. An area chief is the only one that can make new instructors. Actually, it takes 3 or 4 of us to actually run the AED class. In the AED class, each one of us will take a section, like somebody takes habitat, somebody takes tackle, and we will teach that section to start out instructors. Then once we certify you as an instructor, you fit in TPD system, you start volunteering. When you get a certain number of volunteering hours and you have an interest in becoming more, then there's our boss at the top will decide that you're worthy, that you really want to do this, and you really want to give a whole lot of your time and get paid absolutely nothing. And then he finds out that you're that kind of person that really has that stewardship in you. Not just somebody, you got to actually have the stewardship in you and actually believe that this is what you want to do and put something into it, and then you can become an area chief. And they have a special place where we go once a year, they make new area chiefs. And then after that, you can now make new instructors and run your own. Every area chief gets a kit that has all of this in it and all of the tackle and everything you need to run the entire class. Every area chief has it. So an area chief couldn't run it by himself, but you have a couple of area chiefs run the different sections because we do what's called a round robin where people move from station to station and learn in little bits and pieces. So that's what area chiefs do. And that's quite a few of us now.
And that's the goal of TPWD to create more area chiefs and volunteers is there's not enough people within TPW to go out. Texas is a huge state, and with a nice sized population, so there's not enough of their personnel to go out and teach people about conservation and about outdoor activities. So this is how they kind of propagate their philosophy and stewardship through volunteers and area chiefs.
I have no more questions.
Thank you for your time. We appreciate the time you've spent with us, and we hope you have a great summer.